I'm gonna go kind of fast with this stuff. So just bear with me here, but please, I love it when you guys ask questions and participate. In your does everybody have the manual, first of all? Yes or no? If not, do we need me to put it in the chat? Anybody need it? Esther, do you have it? You do? Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So these slideshows are not very comprehensive, so it's more about our discussion. But basically the the number 9 and the blast off are a conversation around these items. Oops, what happened? I lost my mouse for a second. There we go. That's super odd. Okay, so negotiating contracts, transaction management, so that we can actually close the transaction on time and making sure that you know, it's not going to fall out of escrow for any reason. We want to talk about vendor management. So what do we do when we're actually under contract? And then we're also going to talk about the risky side of things. Okay. So if you guys have been going through this, you know, there's been a lot of all of this, the stuff that you've already learned. And now we're just literally talking about the contracts, which is so timely because obviously these times are crazy. If you have been in the middle of negotiating any of these contracts, it is a truly crazy market out there at the moment. So that is the main goal of this class. And I want to share something with you. So in the chat box, I'm going to put, for some reason, unless I'm minimized, I cannot see my mouse, which means I can't select anything in the chat box. Okay, so I'm going to put this transaction timeline in here for you guys. This is, you might have seen this before. It is also on the drive. So hopefully you can grab it from there. If not, let me know. Hopefully you can see that there. But basically the transaction timeline goes over what the days are, the way that the offer is written. Okay, so it's just a summary for you. You can keep that in front. However, all of those days you could change, right? So it's how long is the inspection period? How long is the loan contingency? How long is everything else, right? So what this particular, I want to talk a little bit about best practices, but this particular agenda for this is, you know, we want to make sure we have the buyer and seller timelines built out. So that is the buyer timeline, that it does not have anything different from the seller timeline, really. Because when you're on a sell side, you just kind of wait for the buyer to do most of those things. But the main thing is that the seller timeline has obviously the time from listing to before it's going on the market, right? Before all of this. So, and maybe I'll just open that one up here so we can see. So if you're not looking at the transaction timeline, I'll put it here on the screen. Right? So basically up here, what this is saying is, okay, so you get your listing contract signed, right? And then you receive offers. So if you're on the buy side, this is where you start. And so your offers received or offers written go in, and then you're going to negotiate. They're going to counter you and multiple counter you, especially right now, right? And then mutual agreement is the piece where the offer gets accepted. So when both parties agree, that's day 0. All right, meaning day 1 is the next day. When we start, when the contract says you have 3 days from mutual agreement to put things into escrow. So if today is Friday, what day is it? So if today is Friday, the only thing here is earnest money deposit. It's due in 3 days from now. However, anything having to do with the bank is a banking day. Everything not having to do with the bank or money is just a regular day. Okay, so that's the way to distinguish on the contracts. So the earnest money deposit would be due when? If someone accepted my offer today, when would the earnest money deposit be due? Y'all are on mute.
The first 3 days.
Yeah, so when would it be, like, when is the deadline?
Be due next Wednesday.
That's correct. So we skip Sunday, Monday, right? So Wednesday, I think the contract says 5 p.m., but you know, banks close whenever they close. So Wednesday, get them in before like 4 or whatever. So that's pretty much the only banking day here. The proof of funds, which means what? What's the proof of funds?
Your bank account.
Yeah, so not just for the earnest money deposit, but for the full cash down amount, you have to show where the money is, right? So we're gonna get a proof of funds that is also due in 3 days, and the contract gives you a checkbox that says proof of funds attached, right? So you wanna always send in the offer, proof of funds, your pre-approval letter, right? And then if it's a total cash deal, then you just want to make sure that you have proof for the whole thing, right? HOA documents, and here you can see whose responsibility this is. So it's 3 days, but there's also different reports and disclosures having to do with that. And for that, you have 7 days. So all of these are in parentheses in the contract. This is the way it's written if you don't change anything on it. But you can change all of these days on there, okay? So if you can shorten these, you can make a stronger case for yourself on the offer, right? The seller has to basically give you all kinds of reports and disclosures, including the natural hazard disclosure. And if you're on the listing side, that's really the only thing that you pay for. The agent normally pays for it. I mean, you can ask your seller to pay for it, but you know, it's less than $100 normally. And if you've never used, for instance, you know, Wendy at Snap NHD, you know, the first time they always give you a discount also for using them. So you're going to order a natural hazard disclosure that you're required to give to the buyers if you're on the seller side, and that's due in 7 days. And any other kinds of documents and disclosures, like the seller disclosures, you have 7 days to give them to them. Okay, in the offer, you've got 3 contingencies, right? Every single offer is written with these contingencies in it, and these are the days. So you have 17 days to remove inspection. That's normal days, so it's not business days, right? You have an appraisal due within 17 days, and for you to remove the contingency, and then you have a loan contingency removal within 21 days. So the reason you have a difference here is because the lender orders the appraisal, and the appraiser is a completely different person, right? It's a third party, and they're going to order this appraiser to go in and look at the value of the house to make sure that it qualifies for the loan. So then there's a couple of days gap here just to make sure that that information gets sent over to the lender, and that they still have a few days to look at it before you have to close the loan contingency. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? So every offer is written with these 3 things in it. However, when you write your offer, you can also waive these right on the spot if you can. Right? We never want to recommend to remove the inspection contingency, and that's why you have that buyer advisory in there as well. But they can, if they want to. Let's say that it's a complete tear down and they're going to tear it down anyway. They don't care. Maybe they want to remove the contingency at that point. So what do you guys think so far? Does this, I don't know, for me, I'm a visual person, so this helps me, right?
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, so if you use a transaction coordinator, the transaction coordinators, the first thing they do is they create a timeline for you, and they'll tell you exactly on what days everything is due, right? So you can shorten all of these, you can change it or whatever, but that's why we always want to have how to do the contracts yourself. And even if you want to use a transaction coordinator, basically you always need to know how to do the contracts yourself up until mutual agreement. At that point, you can drop them with the TC, and then they're going to start hunting down all these disclosures and whatever else for you and keep track of your timeline for you. But you need to know up until mutual agreement, because what if you get an offer back on Saturday and it's due on Sunday at night and you don't know how to write up the counter or what addendums you need or whatever. So we have to know how to do our paperwork at least up until mutual agreement. All right. So yeah. And then meanwhile, up until mutual agreement, you're also just praying that your offer is going to get accepted. So anything you can do, we'll talk about what you can do in a minute to make your offer stronger, especially right now. Oh man, it's crazy out there. Okay, so when you get to the end of these days, there's a removal of contingencies form in your zip forms, and it has options. It has only remove inspection contingency, only remove appraiser contingency, only remove loan contingency, or remove, you check boxes for which ones you want to remove, or you just check box remove all. Okay, so it's written so you can use it if you let's say you make your inspection contingency really short, so you have 7 days to do the inspection and respond, then at that point you're going to send in that contingency removal form with just the inspection check, because these are still open, right? Do you guys are you guys familiar with, okay, so why do we have these contingencies in here, and what does that mean? What happens during that period?
A buyer can change their minds if those contingencies are not removed or met.
Yeah. So let's say your client's buying $1 million house. Okay, you're representing the buyer, and you open escrow and they put 3% down. All right. That is, oh shoot, sorry guys, my battery's running low. That is what, 30 grand? No, 300 grand. 30 grand. 90 grand, right? So you put down $90,000, and now you're in the inspection period, and you made it 7 days, and you respond on the 8th day, and they say, sorry, you told us 7 days. Your client, if at that point they want to not continue, they would lose that 3% deposit. Okay, so until any which one of these is open still, you can still walk away with your money. The inspection removal is basically, obviously having to do with the condition of the house, and then you just cite whatever was the problem, why you don't want to do it, and you can walk away, no questions asked. The appraisal would mean that it didn't come in at value, and now your client, 2 things can happen. Either they can say, well, then my loan doesn't approve, or they can say, oh, I don't want to pay that much because it doesn't appraise for that amount, right? So those would be the reasons to walk away there. And then for the loan removal, this is just, you have to get the okay from the lender to remove the loan before you remove the loan. even if it appraised and everything, you always want to get the lender to tell you in writing that it's okay to remove the loan. We had one lender last year who we didn't know. It was on Jesse's deal. She was talking to the lender, and the lender's like, yeah, you're good to go. You know, just go ahead and remove the loan and all this other stuff. Well, then I told her to just get it in writing. Okay. I'm like, so he said, you're good to go. And she's like, yeah, because we had a hard time getting a hold of this lender. Okay. It was like, forget who it was. It was one of the online service. Actually, no, it wasn't an online service. It was something out of Orange County, and tough time getting a hold of him. And I said, are you sure, you know, that that's the case? Can you get him to email you, you know, that it's okay to remove the loan? So the guy emails her, yes, it's fine to remove the loan contingency. We're good to go. And we're good. We're on track for closing and all this stuff. So we removed the loan contingency. And next thing we know, we can't get a hold of the guy again. And he basically then backpedaled and said, oh, you know, my supervisor is saying that, like, you know, it's not going to close that, or it's not really about the closing date, but they were saying like, this loan might not even be like underwritten correctly or something whatnot. So basically, when you remove the loan contingency, this means that that lender is bulletproof that that client qualifies for that, like bulletproof sure that the client qualifies for the loan. And if they're not, then they're not going to remove it, right? So super duper important to get that in writing. So now what happened was the loan wasn't happening and they needed to do all kinds of other things. And then they started saying that the underwriters are busy and they couldn't remove the loan contingency because there's a delay in underwriting, which was happening all last year because of the busyness of all the refinancing and all the other stuff. But now the buyers are on hold, even though they want to move in. And the sellers are having to basically pay longer on their own property taxes and everything else because they're still it's not closing and we don't have a closing date and it's lagging, right? So what happens is the lag causes, you know, fees to incur. Like imagine if the buyer had to move in and they were having to move out of their down leg house and you had to put them in a hotel for 3 days. Who pays for that, right? So if you have it in writing, the lender has to pay. Right? So always, just always, anything anybody promises, get it in writing as soon as you possibly can, right? Max,
And Sonia,
question?
for the in the inspection contingency removal, it can be just pretty much anything that the buyers don't like.
Yeah.
So okay.
Like you can pretty much I mean, like, what are they gonna say if, like, let's say they just walked away and didn't give a reason during that time? They're still in the contingency period. What are they, if they went to court, what would they say? They could just be like, oh, we didn't think it was in good shape. It's too much cost for us, right? Or whatever, then they would always win, right? But the loan, like, don't do this, but I'm just saying, like, the loan contingency removal, let's just say that it does depend only on the lender. And the lender says, oh no, they're still good for the loan and everything appraises and, you know, and they're good to remove. We told them they were good to remove the loan contingency and your client still walks away. You know, all it takes is for them to tell the lender that they lost their job for that loan to not be valid anymore. I mean, or that they're in danger of losing their job. The lender's not going to give the loan, right? So like you can walk away, right? There's pretty much anything you say during those times is going to qualify you to walk away, right? And take your money with you. Okay, and the earnest money deposit. So in the event, let's say your client put down, this is not the down payment, this is just the deposit, right? The rest of the down payment comes at the end. But let's say somebody really wants a house and they're like, instead of 90 grand, they're like, we're willing to put down $200,000 to just show you, like in the deposit only, just to show you how like committed we are, and right. And then they end up walking away after they've closed the contingencies. They don't lose that 200,000. You can only lose up to 3%. Okay, so when that happens and people are writing that kind of offers, it's bluffing. Unless otherwise in a written agreement agreed to a non-refundable deposit, right? If it's in writing that they agree that they can lose the whole 200,000 that they put as a deposit, then they can lose it 100%. So you just gotta be careful when you write your email and send the offer, so you don't say like, here's our deposit, we really want the house and we're willing to do this non-refundable deposit. Oh, oops, you could like, you know, that means even if they walked away, like, yeah. So that's basically that piece of it, okay? Any questions on those contingencies so far? What do you guys think? Give me like an aha. Anybody? Did you hear anything that you didn't know before? Hopefully.
Well, the greatest aha for me is in writing, because people can talk and talk, and then talk is cheap. Then you have in writing, and as you said, that lender to be so low and not to be able to get a grip on. I mean, it's just devastating. So once you have it in writing, you're covered.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just get everything in writing. Don't leave anything up to chance in this. Okay, what you don't want to put in writing though is any like, if it's an argumentative situation, just be real careful what you put in writing. A lot of negotiation is better done first by mouth, and then you get it in writing. And it does not have to be from the other person. You can write it up. Per our conversation today, you will give us blah, blah, blah. We will give you blah, blah, blah. Please respond to this email that you agree, right? So that everyone's on the same page. So you can always get it in writing after as well, but just make sure you get it in writing before you take any action. All right. The last pieces on this is basically, you'll see at the very end of the offer. So if there's a tenant in there, not the owner, but a tenant that, you know, has been living there, they have to they have to basically vacate 5 days prior to close, or arrange a day 5 days prior to close, so that you can go in there and do a final walkthrough, basically. Does that make sense? So if like the tenant's living there, you know, and then now you did the inspection, and it required them to patch some holes in the wall, or like fix the carpet or a door or a window, the tenant has to give the chance 5 days prior to close for you to go in there. So, you know, before that, they don't have to like let you in again or whatever. And then the interesting thing about all of this, okay, so let's just say that you are on the selling side, okay, you're representing the listing, the house, the owner, and you get an offer, and they say, okay, we're gonna, the offer says inspection contingency removal in 17 days. And at the end of day 17, you don't hear anything. What actually happens is, technically, then that's how it goes. That's all it is. You could basically, your client could make this thing fall out of escrow and keep that money, the deposit, or and back out of this deal based on this thing. But normally that's not what happens. And legally, if they wanted to actually back out of escrow, then you have 2 days that we have to wait until we can send a past due notice. basically, a notice to perform. So what would happen on day 18 is you're going to say, hey, are you sending me that thing? Are you going to send me the inspection removal, contingency removal? And then they don't respond. And then day 19, you're going to be like, hey, where is the, you can call and ask and be in communication with them. But it has to be 2 days past due for us to be able to send an actual notice to perform. And then after that, every single day, you can send a notice to perform 3 times. And then you could walk away. So there are legal steps. It doesn't just automatically qualify the seller to walk away or something like that. Does that make sense? Questions on that? Okay. Right. And then see, demand to close escrow. So if they don't show up to the closing, it has to be 3 days past due closing to demand to close escrow. If they're not able to close, and then it's another, you do it for like 3 times before you can do that. So in all of this contracts, the thing is, like, this is still a very loose guideline. First of all, you can change all the dates, obviously, but even if it was exactly like this, most of the time we want the deal to work out, right? So we're like, it's all about you pulling together with that agent. Sometimes agents get a little like their ego comes up and they're like, well, I'm not gonna, do this to my client and da da da, and they don't understand. Like they take that agency responsibility so seriously that they're not understanding that you're actually not in a relationship with the client, and the buyers and the sellers shouldn't even ever see each other. Okay, you don't want to leave them in the same space. You don't want anything to happen with those parties. You and the other agent are the ones that are going to close this deal. So you always, always, always want to be super, super great to the other agent, no matter if they're being a complete crazy person. Because at the end of the day, those are the people who close the deal. Like you call them, you ask them, is there anything I can do to make this better? I promise to always answer my phone when you call me within XYZ time. I'll make it super easy for you. Yeah, people turn down deals because of the agent that's representing. They just know that some people are disasters to work with. They don't want to deal with it. They'll take a lower price to not have to deal with that person because you know that person's going to do something crazy later. Right? So that's in a chat box for you. Were you all able to download it? Hopefully. Yolanda, no?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Oh, you got it. Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So let's go back to this thing. So the main thing here is that you also want to be able to tell your client what the timeline is. Okay. So when we're looking at the buyer timeline, right? You're gonna this is an example. Okay, so what this chapter is telling you is make sure, right, you have a timeline in your buyer consultation that shows you and the client what it's going to look like, right? How is it going to go? So basically, I mean, I've won listings before over other like more experienced agents. And I asked them, why did I get this listing instead of these people, if you don't mind me asking? And they said, because you're the only one that told us what happens throughout the whole process. Like no one else gave them a big view. That doesn't mean you go into every detail. So when you're working a buyer timeline, at the very least, or a seller timeline for that matter, at the very least, you always want to be able to, you always tell them what the next step is, right? Whatever step you're at. So if you write the offer, you want to tell them, okay, so if we write this offer now and they accept on Friday, then, we have 3 days to put the earnest money into the escrow account. And, where is the money? Is it ready to go? Right? So you always want to tell them the next thing. So you want to just, in our market, right? So we do, it's basically that transaction timeline. you just know your market timeline. This is a general timeline, right? And then the home warranty gets purchased for your buyers. You can put it in a contract. Usually the seller will purchase 1-year home warranty for your buyers. And you always want to ask the seller to purchase it. If you really can't get the seller to purchase it, you want to get it for your buyers. Because why? Well, what's a home warranty, first of all? What's it cover? Anybody know?
Is that for your appliances and different things in that nature?
Yeah, exactly. Like pool, appliances, AC, furnaces, that kind of stuff. So if they don't have a home warranty at all, who are they going to call the second something breaks? Even if they have it, they're still going to call you. You're the first person that they're going to call, and you are not going to get referrals out of that client if, a week into them being in the house, their AC breaks down. They're going to be extremely unhappy, right? So we want to get the home warranty. It really saves a huge headache from everyone. And then also it's going to make you more referrals, right? We want to have that home warranty in there.
On an average, how much is it for a year on the home warranty?
It's like between $500 and $700. And you can take it out of closing if you end up paying for it.
So you mean you as the agent pay for the 1-year home warranty if the seller won't pay for it? Okay.
If the seller won't pay for it. I mean, the buyer could, but then just get that for them as a closing gift.
So is that something that you can use as an incentive to, say, for example, you're trying to attract buyers and you can say something in that nature that's something that you take care of for them?
You could say that. I try not to use that as a value prop because usually the sellers, they really don't care.
Okay.
And also the second you start offering to pay for things, it can get expensive.
Okay.
I try not to open that can of worms, but I would, if first of all, I always ask for it from the sellers. With that, the buyer doesn't even think about it. No one has ever said, hey, can you please make sure you ask for them to purchase a home warranty for us? Not one buyer has ever said that to me. They don't know. And so what I'll do is I'll put it in, I'll ask for it from the seller. And when it comes back, I said, oh, by the way, I asked for the home warranty to be paid for you, and they agreed. And now they're gonna be like, oh, you did? Awesome. Right? And if it doesn't go through, then you say, hey, look, they said they don't want to pay for the home warranty, so I'm going to buy it for you.
Okay.
Right? Either way, you're going to look good and do the right thing. And really, it's an investment in your referrals in the future. So, just, yeah, I don't know that you want to. There are people who have that kind of a service. Okay. Sometimes it's more of like a luxury people, but they'll also charge like 4% on the listing side, but they'll do, like they'll charge let's say the contract is normally 6%. The selling side, when they take these luxury listings, they'll be like 8% instead of 6%, meaning they're actually going to collect 5%. But what you get is we pay up ahead, a $30,000 staging fee or something crazy like that. So you can do a tiered commission structure if you want to, and include things. So it's just a matter of what services, right? So yeah, so you want to have some sort of a timeline. Now in Command, there are timelines in there on both those buyer and seller consultations. And also if you Google consultations, sometimes there's really good, buyer timeline, real estate, buyer timeline, real estate, seller timeline, whatever. Sometimes there's really cool graphics out there that kind of show you like a little roadmap type of thing. Lenders have those a lot of times, title has them. So there's a lot of material out there. Just make sure you include a timeline in your presentations, and you're welcome to use that paper that I just gave you. So then just make sure you tell them like, this is what it is unless we change them. Cool.
Do you ask seller to pay for the home warranty in a RPA?
Yes. And
Okay.
so the way you do that is you're gonna call your home warranty rep, whoever that is. Mine is Christy Buscemi. And you're just gonna call her and say, hey, Sonia told me to call you. I have this property we're putting an offer in on. I need to know how much the home warranty would be for this. And she's gonna say, okay, how many square feet is it? Does it have a pool? Does it have AC? Because these things like bump up the, you wanna make sure it's covered. And then she's gonna say, okay, it'll be 570. And then that's what you put on the line. Seller, you check seller to pay for, and then you put Old Republic, home warranty, Christy Buscemi, not to exceed XYZ dollars. So they know, that they'll have an idea, like who do you want it from? And they can counter if they want to. On these multiple counter offers, you obviously don't really want to ask for much. The less you ask for, the easier it is for this offer to glide through, right? All right, so let's just talk about the deals falling apart here. Where is the deal at risk of falling apart?
Financing.
Financing could be. How could it fall apart with financing?
Well, like you said, the buyer could change their minds pretty easily on a whim, just claim employment issues or whatever other mitigating circumstances they can throw out. That's it. That's all it takes.
That's all it takes. Or they go buy a new car. Tell your buyers to not change their credit or their debt amounts when they're in escrow. Oh my God. Is everyone here aware of how that changes the loan? Like if let's say someone goes and buys a $20,000 Hyundai, okay? How does that change the loan? Why does it affect the loan?
It's because it's a new debt and that wasn't included.
Yeah, so now the monthly payment that they qualified for, if it was $4,000 before, and that's how you knew how much money they had to total spend, right? Now they have another $200 payment, and that's gonna take away from that. So now over time, it basically, the debt to income is really important when we're doing loans. Not to mention if they go down dealership row and have their credit pulled at every single car dealership. Okay, people do that. They don't know, and they do it that far, and then they're just shopping around. Okay, where else? Financing for sure.
Contingencies?
Yeah. So contingencies specifically, clearly it's an option, which is why you're still in that weird risky period for you to walk away, or for the buyers to walk away. But most of the time, if it falls apart in there, is because the negotiation isn't going well. So yeah, sometimes it's just too much, but our job is to literally figure out, okay, what is the necessity here? And that's why we bring in the inspectors. But I would say, I would never ask for more than 7 things on a contract from the other side. I mean, I don't know why a 7, but I would just keep it to the minimum. And also think about how you're wording it. So when you get an inspection report back, what the inspector's job is to find every little crack anywhere, right? But then they're going to take it and put it into like a 45-page document for you. And what they're going to do is they're going to label all the things on the inspection report as like red, like immediate danger, like roof is about to fall down, you might die. Then there's gonna be like yellow, like this stuff might go out soon. Like there's or you know, roof has been done. It has 3 years left on the warranty or whatever. You may need to replace some pieces before the warranty runs out. Electrical box is old but functions fine or whatever, right? So that's going to be yellow, and then green is going to be like minor things that are just like noticed and recommended. So there are a lot of people, when you look at your inspection report with your clients, that start looking at those like, oh my God, if the electrical box goes out within the next 2 years, like, you know, that's going to be an XYZ cost to us, but it's not broken at the moment. So just try to keep your buyers reasonable and only go for the red items, because it's like, you know, you buying a car and you're driving down the freeway in a $20,000 investment or $50,000 or $100,000, whatever car you're driving, right? At 80 miles an hour, anything could happen at any time. And that's why we get insurance and gap insurance and all kinds of things to guarantee the value of that. So we can't be like, well, if I crash this car tomorrow, you know, like if it's not broken, don't ask for it. For the most part, like as a rule of thumb. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You don't know what's gonna happen, and now you're just like piling on these things and you have no justification, because sometimes there are things like you know, something might need help soon, you know, and it's like, huh? Like it's their job to find everything and notify you, but at the same time you want to keep your clients calm and not ask for too many. So for the most part, only the really serious things is what you want to ask for.
So it's almost like taking your car in to get serviced, and then the service guy gives you this big report with the
Yeah.
yellow, green, and red, and says, well, these are the major things you need to take care of right now. And the other
Yeah.
ones, you know, you can take care over time. It's not that urgent. Well, it will stop the operation of your vehicle, but
Yeah.
you need to work on the major ones that would affect the operation of your vehicle. Okay.
100%, right? And again, if you want to pair it to that car example, on a new car, yeah, you're not going to have a maintenance to do, you know, right away, but after a while. So unless you're buying a new home,
Right.
this is a used home, you're gonna have dings and scratches and this and that. That's just expected, even in new builds, to be honest, right? But so just, you got to make sure your clients are, it's really helpful to set the expectation of what they're going to see when they get that inspection report back. Marius, what were you going to say?
Especially now in a seller's market, you know, the buyer can be too picky and choosy if he wants his offer to go through.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want them to just be like, no. So the main thing though is that even if you're writing an inspection contingency period, let's say 7 days, okay, and you're having to bid over asking for the property, they might tell you up ahead of time that there's some things that there's already that they know of, right? And you don't want to underbid because of those things, because at the end of the day, you're still going to do the inspection and you're still going to have, excuse me, a chance to walk away. But the goal of the offer is to glide through and take this thing off the market. All you need is an acceptance first, because once it's off the market, I don't care if they said we're not doing any repairs or anything like that. It doesn't really matter, because they're not going to want to put it back on the market. Right? They would rather do the minor things, even if it's $2,000 for something, they would rather do that than put it back on the market and then not get another offer that's that high because it fell out of escrow. So when anything falls out of escrow, now they're not going to get the same offers guaranteed, unless they have a backup offer, maybe, perhaps, right? So just something, so definitely all of the contingencies, death. Sometimes people die in the middle of transactions, and that really complicates things.
Well,
Yeah. right? So I would say like definitely know the paperwork. But you know, the great thing is that if it's not, I think people sometimes think that in the beginning you want to do all your own paperwork so you learn it, and that's great if you want to do that. But also when you work with a transaction coordinator, you're going to get a hang of it in like 2-3 transactions of what they, because you're in the loop on all the paperwork, but you're not having to, like Chris, if you're using Crystal, for instance, like she'll just email you and be like, hey, did they email you these things by any chance? And you're like, what are those things? And no, was I supposed to ask for them? And she's like, oh no, I already asked for them for you, but I'm just checking if they emailed it to you instead of me, right? So you're going to be in the loop for all these things that they're going to ask for the paperwork, disclosures, any other reports, any other deadlines. And you're going to realize that, oh, okay, that was supposed to get done there, right? Okay, so, but I think most importantly, these questions, like just be aware that obviously the deal, anything can happen, and you just want to stay in really good communication with the other agent. And that's kind of what this last question here is, like, how can you help manage other parties involved in a deal? So I don't know, have any of you ever done an exercise where, like, I don't know, it's like a group exercise where they have you pair up, and then you have to, like, the other person closes their, person A tells the person B who has their eyes closed, like which way to walk or whatever, and you have to guide them, or you can guide them however you want to guide them. And you pair up, but you're in a crowded room of all these other people doing the same thing. And when you have your eyes closed and you're just, even if they hold your hands and like pull you through and you're moving through a crowd, the second you flinch is when they flinch, they think something is happening, right? You have to think of yourself like that, because that's what buyers do. They look at you, and if you're like, they're gonna go, because they don't know, right? So it's really staying calm and staying in such good communication, you know, with that other agent, that you really don't, you know, freak anybody out, right? So you always want to be solution oriented. People get really defensive, like, well, my sellers don't want to do that, and and I don't want them to have to pay, and no. You're trying to close a transaction together. You're trying to find a way to make it work for everyone. So I can't stress that enough, really, to be honest.
The question.
Yeah.
Potentially, I mean, who knows what has transpired this year nationally with the virus, with, you mentioned deaths during escrow, but how would that impact a lot of sellers that have trusts, which you see increasingly on the market?
Sellers in a trust, it doesn't really affect them. It's the same. A trust sale is just the same. You just have to have, you know, one person in the trust is a trustee. And so you just want to make sure you're talking to that person, right? That's the decision maker. And then all we do is we provide a copy of the trust to escrow. Does that help? It's really just the same. Don't worry about a trustee sale. Is just a regular resident or whatever sale it is. It's the same thing, except you have a group of people and one person has to be the one signing for everyone. But if it's like REOs and something else, then those kinds of things take on kind of a like life of their own. But yeah, good question. Okay, so a couple of things you can do. So this is kind of like what Yolanda, you were saying, like, what do we tell them? Is that something we can use? So these 3 things are actually, even though it's very simple, but this is actually a really, really great way to show your clients that you're good at what you do. So A, using the KW app. So I said this yesterday on one of the calls, but you know, JD Powers has a study, a customer satisfaction study that basically says, anytime you use a device to show your clients something, whether it's something they can touch, whether it's an iPad or a phone or some sort of an app or whatever, that kind of stuff. They are 80% more likely to do business with you again and to send you repeat business. Right? So obviously you can get reviews out of them, right? It's just a weird thing, but it makes us look really good when we have technology, even for the most techiest person. If they're not good with that, I mean, if they think it's, you know, they're like, oh, this is cool, but whatever. No, still the fact that you did that and you gave them that and you show them that that's available, it makes them a lot, like, you know, and it's something to talk about. Okay, vendor and utility lists. Now you guys all have access to the drive. There's a bunch of vendors in there, but you may want to consider creating your own page where you have those options for your clients that you can easily send to them. And then stay in touch with those vendors. You know, if someone calls them out of the blue and they're like, yeah, Max sent me. Oh, who's Max? Right? Like if you, Max, you sent somebody to talk to, for instance, Joanne Gallen, and they said, Max Wright sent me, like, she'd be like, oh, he's so great. He's a great agent, you know, blah, blah, blah. Right? Like, so make sure you have those vendor relationships and then put them on your list. And then planning a closing gift. So closing gift is not something that you normally like tell your client about, but definitely you want to have something for the closing. Right? So figure out what that is. I posted a link for some closing gifts on our Facebook page, on the office Facebook page a couple of weeks ago. Forget what that link was.
Yeah, can you go back to that last slide with the
This one?
create a vendor and utility list. So is this something that you can put on a landing page or your website, or how would you recommend what that would look like?
Totally. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great idea. Yeah, 100%. Work on that. I think that's a great idea. You
Okay.
can. And, you know, just as a document, I think most people are just gonna, like, I mean, I literally just got a text message from a friend of mine who said, can you send me that utility list again? Right? So it might be something that you wanna, you know, plan around that you're gonna have to be sending it to, or just sending a link to it, however you do it. But that's a great question. Okay.
The closing gifts, how would you acknowledge referrals that you get?
Great question. It just depends. So legally, we are allowed, basically what you can always ask the broker if you're unsure of how much you can give, because you can't give like a percentage of your money or whatever, but you can give gift cards. I think it's like $500 gift cards are allowed. And so you could up to 500. It wouldn't necessarily have to be that much, but I would definitely encourage, you know, something for just giving the referral, which is smaller. And then if it actually is a solid, like, you're not going to give someone $500 if it never pans out. Right. So maybe if it closes, you know, have a system basically in place. I think that's a great question. And obviously, like anything personalized to that particular client, so you're hearing like what they're into is always a good thing, right? So even if I buy my clients a home warranty, I'll still get them something else too. Okay, so something small. All right, so the rest of this chapter focuses heavily on command. So I don't think that, what I would like to do is have an entire, so what you asked, Yolanda, the buyer and seller experience and all of the command stuff for that, it's really gonna fall into the contracts class that we have coming up I will look for what time it is and send it to you guys. I know we were planning on putting it on a calendar where they teach you how to do the opportunity from beginning to end. So I think this is for the most part exactly what this class is for. Feel free to scan the other stuff, but there's a lot of scripting and role play activity in the end of this. But that basically concludes your Ignite. So I know that in terms of these contracts and scenarios, we could do this all day and go over all kinds of scenarios, but the truth is every transaction is so different, right? They really are. And so, yeah, any like final thoughts or ahas around this? It's fast, but you know, a contracts cost is separate. So you pair all this stuff. Basically, the goal is that you know what the timeline is, and that you have it in there and you're able to explain it to your client, right?
Right.
Yeah. Are you
Thank
guys good?
you. Yeah, thank you. It's a it's a lot of information. Again, you know, I always remember the comment you made about the learning is like trying to drink from a you know, fire hose. Just it's just so much.
You're like, just
and-
give me a little, and it's
right. So still growing, still learning, and you still have your group coaching sessions, right? Those you still having those, Sonia?
So this week, I don't believe they were on a calendar, but
Okay.
yes. So we'll go back to the 2 p.m.s every day next week.
Okay.
So, but meanwhile, call me, text me, or anything comes up, and we'll go from there. Okay. I appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you.
All right. I know we have so many Zoom, so I like to keep it short and sweet, and we'll go as a case by case basis from with these, like, you know, contracts and working through them. So
Cool.
Okay.
One more question, Sonia. Is the vendors list, is that the allied resources that you have on the Google Drive?
yep,
Okay.
there's 2 different
Cool.
ones on there, so you can kind of look at them, and then there's a separate inspector list in
Cool.
that folder. Yep. Okay. All right, guys.
Awesome.
Have a great Friday. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys
Thank you,
soon.
Okay.
Sonia.
Thank you, Sonia.
Bye.
Have
Bye.
a good weekend, everybody.
You too. Bye.